Why don't we start out then with Alexei Levene, the co-founder and chief commercial officer of Desolenator, Jane Glavan, the CEO of Distant Imagery. Distant Imagery is a homegrown UAE SME working towards self-enlightened aerial solutions for environmental monitoring, analysis, and habitat restoration. Hello, Vivek. This is Vivek Tripathu, the CEO of Gaea, which develops digital solutions for decarbonization. And finally, we have Alexei Levene, who is very, very busy.
This is the life of an entrepreneur. It actually is a real showcase of what we go through.
We set this up. This is on purpose. He is the co-founder and chief commercial officer of Desolenator, which is making desalination more sustainable. Thank you all for joining us today. So let's just start with a round of applause. Thank you. It's 4:30. Well done, all of us. So Jane, I'd love to start with you. You've been in this business for how long?
I've been in the UAE for 23 years, but with Distant Imagery, we started it about 6 years ago.
6 years, okay.
Yeah.
So you've been through some things.
Yes, we've seen things.
Was there ever a time when you hit a wall and you just weren't sure that this was going to work, that you could keep going? What kept you going?
Really, we've hit many walls, not just one wall. But really, it's this ultimately always having this goal that you're always trying to work towards, really understanding what the end is, what you're trying to achieve. And really, I know it's a little bit corny, but we use it all the time. # we love what we do. But really, what we love what we do carries us through that roller coaster a lot of the time. And the ability to maneuver and be nimble and, sometimes we always give the advice to other entrepreneurs is to not only go one road and think this is the only way you can achieve that ultimate goal and target. While you're in the trenches and working with clients and partners and ultimately who you're really trying to really support and help, there's multiple different ways that you can get to that ultimate goal. So we always say, be a little bit nimble with and be open to multiple new ways of doing what you're trying to achieve. And for us, that started with, that's really led us through multiple different iterations of who we are as Distant Imagery, but always with this goal of supporting communities for us and having them develop the tools that we build. So that's the ultimate goal, and the highlight is really supporting and upscaling at a global level. And how we do that is different ways as we keep working with different clients and partners.
Do you have an anecdote that you can share that really made you think, okay, I'm in this for the long haul?
It's just there's moments every day, right, when you hear the horrible stories and you can look at your children in the eyes and say, this is what we're doing, or having our kids in the field with us, playing in the mangroves and being there with us. When we're chatting with this incredible gentleman, a royal family member of Tonga, and he's literally looking at me saying, you don't understand, my island is actually sinking. It's not just climate change and sea level rising, it's actually sinking and I need help. And being able to provide that help with what we do and getting their communities to be self-sufficient is really, those are the moments we go, okay. Or having, as part of what we do here in the UAE around the restoration, we have, 1,000 volunteers at our sessions. And when you see the people come on site and they're formal and very serious and they get a little bit of mud on them and suddenly they kind of smile and giggle, and by the end of the session they're chatting, they're loving, they're sniffing the seeds, they're playing with the seeds, they're not throwing mud, but they really get into it. And those moments of connection with and it means a lot because we see what the impact that we're having.
What's a moment during habitat restoration that you'll never forget, that you'll tell your kids about?
It's that moment you see, because we take ecological processes and we have scientific methodology, and there's a lot of background in how we restore and how we do it, and we're finding these right connections and the right lay of the land. But really, it's nature, right? You can use technology in many different ways, but it's just supporting. It's a secondary tool. What's actually taking place is nature itself. And that moment, because you've done everything you can, but ultimately it's in nature's hands. And so that moment you come back when you monitor and you see those seedlings and you see your little seed babies come up. And, because we're planting in the millions, you see these large landscapes of little seedlings coming up. It's just every year, we've been doing it for 5 years, every year when we come back, we plant in October, we come back in December. That moment where you look, we come back a little bit before, but that ultimate look, and you see other people looking at it and so proud, with Azza from ADNOC, she just glows when she looks at those moments where, you're connecting with your partners that you're working with, and they look at, what they've been a part of. That's very cool. So it's kind of every year. Yeah.
That's good. So you see a sea of green and think, I did that.
Yeah, we did that.
We did
all
that.
of us, yeah.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Alexei for a minute. First, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so we developed a modular solar-powered desalination technology. We don't use any chemicals, we don't need any fossil fuels, and we don't make any waste. We take out waste brine and we make salt, so nothing goes back into the environment. So just think about that for a minute. We use the abundant energy of the sun, the abundant resource of the sea, and not doing any pollution, and doing it in a low carbon way. And we make water for less than $1 per 1,000 liters. Right? So that's what we do.
Amazing. Yeah. And can you tell us about a time when you thought, I don't know if I can keep doing this? It's too hard.
You mean since this morning?
we were walking and chatting about this.
Yeah, and look, honestly speaking, a lot, right? I mean, that's at the end of the day, if you're not failing, you're not at the edge, right? I'm not talking about from lack of effort. If you're not failing and you're trying, and then you're not on the edge. And being on the edge is edgy. It's really tough, right? People let you down. You have a vision. You get resistance. You think of the future you want to create for your children, and other people think of the risk of trying something new. So you're always up against what I call gravity. And honestly speaking, there's many times where I've just thought, why am I doing this? I could have a nice job, I could get a nice salary, relax at the weekend, climate change, don't worry about it, that's for somebody else. But at the end of the day, you have to have something that you draw on because there are moments that come, definitely I faced a few, because there's easier lives to have, honestly. Doing industrial hardware, the kind of green hardware that can actually change the course of the planet. In water, the most undervalued, most valuable commodity in the world, trust me, there's easier things to do. But when all else is gone, when you're let down, when you've got 1 week's left before you have to pay your salaries and there's no money in the bank, and these situations happen. Where do you go? Where do you go? And for me, the only place you have to go is where your source of nourishment is just remembering what this is all about, right? We forget, right? We're stardust, right? All of us, no? How often do we think about that? But what if that's a frame of reference? Actually, what if you start with, okay, let's remember the big picture. And actually, there's a concept in India, karma, right? That actually doing something, it has a causal effect. And we all know that, right? When you do something good you do something nice for somebody when not thinking about what you're going to get back, you feel good, right? So actually, that can go quite deep. And so that's too many experiences like that.
No, I love that. Do you have a story that you can share that maybe illustrates a time when you thought, okay, I can keep doing this? Like, something that came through that you needed that made you realize, okay, I can keep going.
I mean, again, so many, but I'll take that example of like literally being out of cash. We had these investors who were actually interesting and basically like left us for dead, actually. Really like milked us, took all our information, had no intention of investing, and were just leading us along and really left us for dead. And I had the salaries to pay of my team with maybe 10 days left before that's due. And just thinking, oh my God, this is it. We're done. And these poor people, all the effort and blood and sweat and tears, this is it. I can't believe it, And we're trying to do something good. And, why is there no support? Where, all these things, oh my God, I see the other entrepreneurs in the room nodding. Yeah, we know what it's like. And there's just who do you call? Mom, everything will be all right.
I had to do that once.
Yeah,
I had to borrow off my parents.
I've done it as well. Mom, everything will be all right. Okay, great, thanks. We have a very sweet dog. She's lovely. Anyway, but, and this has not just happened once with what I'm about to say. Literally 10 days left, out of the blue, I get a phone call. Guy I've never met in my life. And he's like, oh, hey, I read about you guys. I wanted to invest. And, okay, I was like, okay, sure, let's have a chat. You're great. And we have a chat. And he's actually now one of our biggest investors. I went back to him a couple of times, but he actually is now one of our biggest investors. We had one discussion. We had a couple of emails exchanged between us, and he invested 3 days later. Nearly $1 million. And that has happened in some form or other enough times that actually I have some faith that there's a higher power. No, because it's that, there's nothing else that can explain it. So there is some, it's never enough to really set you on your way. Always enough just to keep you going. But yeah, that's...
That's amazing. Did you cry?
Oh, you mean since this morning? Yeah, no, I think it's healthy to be in touch with your emotions. Yes.
I agree. No, I'm not an entrepreneur, but I'm married to one. And so some of what you're saying is very familiar.
The roller coaster.
Yeah. Bless you. Vivek, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
I'm Vivek. I'm co-founder, CEO of a company called Gaea. Again, the stories that you're listening have pretty much the same, but I'll start with first where Gaea came in. So before starting up with Gaea, it was pretty much that 17 years, oil and gas industry, can't think of speaking sustainability in one breath. So everything about oil and gas. One point of time in my life, I had been almost selling 200,000 barrels of oil a day. So that's the sort of work I had been doing to one of the biggest refineries back in India. Here in the region, was working with one of the biggest oil field service company, Baker Hughes, and working with Saudi Aramco on multiple well pads together. So with all of this, I believe there was some reckoning or probably something to do around with probably pandemic. I would say that pandemic for me was good because I had got plenty of time thinking about exactly the set of things which probably Alexei was just trying to touch upon on karma and what exactly is the purpose that I'm driving with. Is it just about my money or my career, my growth, or is it something overarching that I wanted to really pursue for? And that's where Gaea started coming in very, very odd, or probably I would say that completely amorphous sort of a business idea as such. But one broad canvas that I always wanted to play around with was into sustainability for sure. And that's where Gaea started with. So what we do in very simple words, we help businesses connect the dots, help them identify their core emissions from business, where exactly those emissions are coming from across their value chain, their business, their operations, map that up and help them identify decarbonization opportunities. So one of such opportunities are my fellow panelists. So that's where we help businesses connect with the right decarbonization solutions which are available, which are technically ready in commercial stage, and help them actually budget for all that decarbonization and achieve their net zero goals. So that's what we do. multiple ways to do about it. Can do a consulting work. We have sort of AI-enabled tech platforms by which we help industries actually to help them achieve their net zero status. So that's in a nutshell what Olive Gaea does.
Sounds really interesting. Can you tell us a story about a time when you hit a wall and what kept you going?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, this is definitely not just one, probably. And I would say that all of this, before one gets that kick that, yeah, I mean, I have to start something on my own and basically start up something. The initial thoughts are really very, I would say that, very glorified, right? Very glamorous in a way, right? You feel like that you're an own boss. Your title immediately would change from probably the team lead to the CEO of the company. All of that is so lovely, and it stays there for some time. Your family loves it in the start very much. They see you getting a card printed which says that you were co-founder and CEO. Oh, wonderful, Dad. Now you're the guy. Yeah? But it fades away, I tell you. Very, very, very quickly it fades away. This all boils down at the end is monthly you're not making any salary. So all of your savings are declining. But at the same time, your family is growing, right? Your kids growing up. They need educational support. They have their ambition. And definitely one thing, when just a sort of a side story here, you can convince anybody in the world, but not your kid to start up something because he has seen the bad part of it. So that's where basically I would say that the wall was always, in terms of pivoting the whole business idea as such, that were the first time, and I would say that, I mean, this goes back that you only sort of start turning up things when you hit the bottom, right? And that's where at Olive Gaea, we started up all of this in consulting fashion, but there are like n number of consulting companies starting from BCG doing the same stuff. We've got PwCs and all sort of big fours, and everybody is into that business. We knew for sure we don't have 100 years of legacy in back. We can't just compete with them. So that's where probably the pivot had come for us to really come up with solutions which are cost efficient, which actually the businesses wants today. Like in terms of in the age of digital tech, AI, we need to leverage that, and that's where probably we got our first pivot. But yes, the block or probably the wall definitely was first in terms of finding out the pivot, the other in terms of funding, which is of course sort of a daily story for all startups here. So yeah, that's where I would say that for the first time we found it, but we've got a better story out of it later. So again, as Alexei mentioned that typically in startup and especially in UAE, you have a lot of HNIs. So as a startup, you would always feel that you will hit with some of the sheikhs and some days they would give you $1 million. Right? Just start. You've got a great idea. You can start with that. That was the thought. We met with, at Olive Gaea, we met with a couple of angel investors. They were very keen. They showed on the interest in terms of, and they were multiple, right? Not just one. There were 4 or 5 guys in group. They started evaluating us. They really loved the whole idea. They loved the whole passion that we had got, the products that we have on mind. We got some funding done, but again, how I would put it, unlike probably a seasoned investors, they were all into quick money, sort of growth and all that, and we are just in the initial stages. So we reached to that point where, again, sort of a fight or sort of a very bad conversations, but I would say that all of this turned down into more that we reached out to the market. We started thinking about crowdfunding ourselves. And that's where we came across with one of the biggest VC firms in India. They heard our whole story. They saw the growth that we have achieved without any funding and pretty much bootstrapping that we had done. And that's where we clocked in $1 million. So probably, yeah, that's where I would say that.
What a day.
It's thanks.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Back to Jane for a minute.
Cornerstone.
I realized that I got so
Calorie
excited
analysis.
to hear your story that I forgot to have you explain what it is that you do at Distant Imagery. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Let's go back.
worries at all. So I've been here 23 years. We're a very, very proudly homegrown UAE SME. We started about 5-6 years ago. We actually started because I was working in government and we had a lot of budget cuts, and my husband is a helicopter engineer. So I kept asking him, "Can you build me this? Because I want to do this." And he's like, "Okay." And "Can you do this?" "Okay." So that's how we really started with this idea that We build all our own aerial and underwater solutions, so kites, balloons, drones, to do environmental analysis and monitoring, as well as habitat restoration. And then what we do is we test it at scale within here in the UAE with incredible partners that we get to work with. And then we take those solutions, so you can kind of see one of our drones at our stand. We make them so that the communities in developing countries around the world are able to actually build it themselves so that they become self-sufficient. So we we get them alongside them, we build the drones together, we do the habitat restoration, or we do the methodology around illegal poaching or fisheries, and then they become self-sufficient. We license it to them, and it was this idea because really for the world to advance, we really need to really have these solutions available and radically listen to these developing communities around the world. We really need them to have access to these solutions in a real way, so they are actually doing the monitoring, they're doing the restoration, and that's where you get real scale. That's where you actually make real change.
We need to give them the power.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So next round of questions. What do you wish you had known 10 years ago as an entrepreneur?
As I say, so many things. I think as a woman in climate tech, especially, and speaking to all the women here and the women who are to come as well, it's really about not being afraid. If you are a little bit afraid, that's a really good thing because you're testing your boundaries. So I would say, really, I would tell myself, don't give up any opportunity that is given to you. So speaking on a stage, speaking in hundreds of people, taking meetings, doing small chat, all these things I wish I had told myself really to keep pushing and doing those barriers, because that's actual growth. And then I would say 10 years ago really is because it's a hard transition going from a stable government job where you have weekends off and salaries and things like that.
Weekends off. I don't know that word.
Is that, and I would say to everybody who always asks, is really don't be afraid to be self-financed first, because you just have to start. And sometimes you're in a much stronger position. I would say most of the time you're in a much stronger position, unless it's large tech like Alexei's. But if it's this idea of around aerial solutions or things that are around you that are accessible, I would say self-fund yourself. So then you have a proven track record. You can show your solutions work. And then from there, you have a much stronger position as you go into the field and you're talking to investors, or if you open yourself up to investors or project financing and things like that. So not to be afraid not terrified. Afraid is a good place to be in, because it means you're pushing boundaries, and don't be afraid to get started with self-financing.
Thank you. What about you, Alexei? What do you wish you had known?
Maybe I think I knew these things, but I mean, there's knowing and then there's knowing. So I guess the first one is what I'd call selective hearing. People always want to give you advice, right? And I remember when I started my first business, I've done a few, and I remember a lot of people. I had a really good job in the software industry. I used to sell CDs for millions of dollars. It was great. I was miserable with it, but I earned a lot of money. But anyway, when I did my first business, a lot of people were saying to me, like, "Why are you doing it? You got a good job, and don't take a risk," and the rest of it. And I did it anyway, and then I realized that all of those people have never taken a risk in their lives.
Yeah.
And so what do they know? Like, you want to advise me, don't do something. Actually, it's a projection of your fear, not my life. And so you need to know I want to hear from somebody who tried something impossible, failed. That's the person I want to get advice from, So know who because not all advice is equal. So that's one. And I think the other one, I'll quote my chairman, who is until recently the CEO of a very large Saudi company and a wonderful man. And quite simply, in the entrepreneurial game, I think he hits the nail on the head. money talks, bullshit walks. Right? True. Right? So the earlier you can establish, if you're dealing with the latter rather than the former, the better.
Awesome. What about you, Vivek?
So I guess I'll lean upon more. I guess probably 10 years back, if I had really known, I would have started it then itself instead of starting late now. I only feel that that the early you start is where your whole sort of learning process is pretty quick. You are more agile. You take quick calls. You have less sort of EMIs going on from your accounts. So you always have better chances of taking larger risk. The other element, of course, is about could have saved more dollars probably, which I had spent for no reasons during my job, which could have helped me really sort of delay my external funding probably a couple of months more. So yeah, that's what I would put it.
Okay. If a 25-year-old entrepreneur came to you, or wannabe entrepreneur, who has an amazing idea to change the world, they are so ambitious, and they are so idealistic, and they are so excited, what would you tell them, Vivek?
So I guess we get to know with a lot of such exciting ideas and individuals that we meet. A lot of guys that we go back to our colleges. When I'm from IIT in India, they're the kids today, now in our days, and now compared to them, they have startup when they are just in the first year of their engineering itself. And a couple of them have reached to a stage where they are raising Series D rounds. So I feel sometimes that's the pace at which people are growing. If anyone comes up with a fantastic idea, I would definitely suggest them to really roll that out, test it out in the market, have some sort of POCs done, just to see and get the real feedback. Because most of the times what I have learned from myself, and also I see other startups and other companies which are coming with great ideas, is the market fit is what defines the longevity of your product or service or your business. So I would always suggest with any such idea to really try out with POC, be at cost or probably free of cost if it is possible, but get it done, reach to the market quick and fail quick so that you learn quick and move on. So that's what my advice would be.
Sounds wise. What about you, Alexei?
Okay, I'm going to give you a cynical answer and a non-cynical one.
Deal.
Okay, so the cynical answer is, and I got interviewed a while back, like, what advice would you give for entrepreneurs in water, I should say? And I was like, don't do it. Unless you have to. If you have to, you have to, right? And because for me, I get told, oh, it's not possible. Then I'm thinking, okay, I'll bloody prove you wrong, so I have to. So,
you need a little bit of stubbornness to succeed here, right?
You absolutely do, because gravity is very strong, right? So, no, but I think in the more positive spin I would give is to say, just build deep roots, like being a tree with lots of big leaves, if it doesn't have deep roots, the wind will blow it over pretty quickly, You build deep roots, and that's what we talked about before, right, is having something when all else are down. When the chips are down, that's something you can draw on, something that nourishes you. Because if you don't have that, definitely it's going to be a very difficult experience.
What about you, Jane?
Just building on that, I think, is really being an entrepreneur can be very lonely at times because there's such big challenges and the roller coaster is so real. So having a network and finding that network of other entrepreneurs is so vital. For instance, I met Alexei like 2 years ago, I think, at Davos as part of the Uplink Challenge. And having that and where all of us are still really in touch, and just having someone, you've had that really rough day, you've lost something or something didn't go as planned, having that person that you can turn to or a group of people that really can share and go through the flow and cheer each other on, really, and celebrate each other. Finding that network for somebody new is incredibly important.
I feel like that's good advice for anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think we're almost out of time. Do you have any final reflections on resilience, Jane?
Again, I think it's really what drives you, what motivates you. And I know people say, oh, what gets you up in the morning? No, really, what gets you up in the morning? Because that is, there are downs, there's celebrations, and you have to celebrate each thing, but those downs. So it really is, what do you love? What change and keep that as your high. I know it sounds corny, but it's true. It's what gets you through the day on those bad days.
Yeah, I mean, beyond what we've said is that I also think that mind-body connection is very important. So I took up yoga some years ago. I know I don't look like it. Honestly, like doing yoga, getting into some meditation, just like getting perspective, physical, union of mind and body, and that really helps. And that is about resilience because many times in life, in my entrepreneurial life, I don't sleep. And then I need to be up the next day, and oh my God, the thing doesn't work, and you need to redo the presentation, and then it's a lot of stress, right? So if you're talking about resilience, you need to be resilient in that sense as well. You need to be able to deal with the pressure. It's a lot of pressure. It can be a lot of pressure, a lot of travel. I mean, when we went to Davos, remember that week?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole week we're running around and they're meeting like chief execs and celebrities and running across town and doing this thing. And by the end of the week, I mean, you're just exhausted. I mean, I was ill after that, actually. Yeah. So, I think also taking care of yourself is super important.
Yeah. No, I would say that, and I guess this is precisely what goes back. I mean, in terms of if one is really looking out to start up something, really ask yourself what's your true calling actually is. I'll tell you from my personal experience is that in your phase until you reach to a stage where you have enough funding on your back, when your business is throwing back some probably the bottom lines there, when you have enough team to support you, there is still a long journey. Now that long journey is again very, very relative, right? For some people, it all gets fed on your resilience. And how long can you really extend that portion of your whole experience as such? So true calling is really what I always believe in. There would be moments, there will be times where you will get temptation, right? Going back into what you were doing or probably choose an alternate path. If you're not really tested and tried out things and you are just jumping guns, probably it won't lead you where you want to. Early in my life, I can tell you, this is like probably my first job, just out of the college, and I had a habit, right, at that point of time, and this is very, very personal. I've never shared this with anyone, but I had a habit of picking up things when they are very exciting, right? Some new business to come up, I will jump first into it, and I used to be that enthusiastic during my days when I used to work, and I used to pick things very fast. And any new business idea, any particular stream of business which is different from the existing business, I had been the first one to jump upon. And that led me to probably rounds of promotion all through my jobs. Just because I had been trying something which nobody else is picking up actually, or never dared to. But all of this, what I realized, one of my colleague, or rather whom I reported to, said once, Vivek, starting up is very easy. Yeah, there is a good amount of energy that you're drawing from the excitement, the adrenaline, all that stuff. What it is important is to finish things. If you have taken up something and you have not tried, tested, always using all your energy and brought it to a logical conclusion, I'm telling you, it will continue. It will never stop. From one opportunity to the other, you go to one job to the other, whatever you wanted to do. In life, I believe this is the principle I have started following up very rigorously while doing this startup, actually. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Can I get a round of applause for all of our speakers? I think at least 2 of them drove from Dubai through the water, so bravo to you for that. Thank you again.
Thank you.
It's wonderful.
Thanks.